G'day. A lot of fencing videos are going to show you how to set up a fence from perfectly new materials where everything's at its optimum. But you and I know that 9 times out of 10 you're going to have to use old stuff and you're going to have to make do on a farm. So this video is about rebuilding a fence using secondhand materials for almost no cost whatsoever. I've got a secondhand gate here that I've got secondhand posts that have been donated. Now I know what you're going to say, you can't reuse treated pine posts. Well, the reality is, as long as there's no pitting in here, like this is a bit of a concern, I'll probably use this for a top rail. As long as there's no pitting in here, the coating is still active. It's when it starts to flake away and fall off like this that you'd become skeptical of the posts. Now, why am I reusing old stuff? Well, this farm that I'm working on at the moment is actually a community type farm. We're trying to get this club going using donated and sourced materials and the generosity of the owners of this property. We're going to take the old fence down, we're going to rebuild the corners, we're going to hang a gate, and then we're going to put the old fence wire back up, and I'm also going to show you how to strain sheep mesh at the same time. Alright, so first step is we're going to cut the old wire off the post, pull it out and lay it to one side. So I've got to start at the ends where we've got all these funky farmers gates and everything else, and just get rid of the whole lot. I've got to pull staples out with the pliers. They're going straight into a bucket, not leaving a single thing on the ground. When you're working with old fences, you can just make a mess and then your animals get sick. Just not worth it. Keep yourself tidy. Next bit of fun is removing the wire from where it's been wound around the stake. See, a bit of the mesh is on that side, bit of the mesh is on this side. Absolute mess. So looks like they're only wired on with one wire. So I've cut that so it stays on the wire and I don't have to pick that bit up. Now we'll just lift it up off the stake. I think this fence is going to pretty much sum up every mistake you can make in fencing. Never ever use nails bent to hold your fence on a post. Go down the street, pay $10, get 50mm barbed staples. The problem with these guys, and I'm going to use these good fencing pliers to get rid of it, the problem with nails is that they don't stick in the post. There's nothing to catch into the groove and hold them there. Barbed staples, you've got a barb, that's why they don't come out. Never ever use nails, because your stock will push on the fence, pop the nails out, they'll go on the ground, then your stock will stand on them, you got a vet bill. Don't do it, it's not worth it. By pulling out the posts that are in the wrong place, I can reuse them and save a bit more money. As I said, this is a real low budget job. A lot of fencing contractors wouldn't even go near it. Well, I doubt any would. These two tools are rapidly becoming my favourites in this episode. Would be the one time they use a barbed staple. Well, we've finally got all of the wire off the fence. We've brush cut where the post holes are going. Now it's time to dig the holes for the new box end assemblies. Well, that took a few hours more than you'd like to get these posts in. You would normally get a fencing contractor, I suppose, to put your fence posts in, but we just put them in by hand, do it in our own time on a Sunday, get some exercise along the way. We're going to put in our top rails on all of our assemblies, hang the gate and pretty much call it a night at that. I'll come back tomorrow after work, we'll strain up the wires and then we'll have the job done. Okay, well that's done. Now all I've got to do is repeat that 6 times. Now, a lot of people will go crook at you if you cut a treated pine post, because obviously it's going to rot at the top where you cut it. But have a look at that guy. It's going to look stupid if we leave it. So I am going to lob it off, but I've got a trick up my sleeve. I'm going to use this Inseal Clear here to treat the post and protect it from rotting from the top. Now obviously there's a bit of mesh here missing for a reason. That's where we want to put our hinge, so I'm going to measure somewhat low on that so that an animal like a bull or something like that, not that I'd put a bull in this paddock with this fence, can't get their head underneath it, lift the gate up and throw it off the hinge. So I want it to sit about there, I reckon. Now I'm here on my own and I've got no one holding the gate for me, so I'm just going to wedge it up with one of my offcuts. Okay, so I've given a bit of slack here. It's been able to get the sleeve across here. Now I've just wedged this piece in here, and then I've got to put the camera down. I honestly can't hold it. I'm going to put the bolt through there. Seriously, no one ever said YouTubing was easy, especially not in your own. So I've got the bolt now. I'll pop it in. Do up the nut, and the gate's nearly on. I don't know about you, but I just love it when the gate goes on and you get that satisfying swing. It's awesome. Okay, so we've got all of our box end assemblies done now. We've got the tie back strained. We're ready to start putting up our top and bottom save wires. Before we do that, we need to clear away all of the grass immediately under the fence line. Now, this is more like what a small hobbyist might do at their own property, reusing, repurposing, recycling materials, trying to make the job look good at the end. So I hope you understand that that's the purpose of this video. If you need to see or learn any of the knots that I've used or any of the techniques involved in building the end assemblies, there should be a link on the screen now that will take you to all my knot videos. This video is not about how to tie those knots. This video is about how to approach this kind of job. Okay, so that's looking a little bit better now as we look down the fence line. The next thing we have to fix up is all the star pickets leaning over. As I mentioned before, they've hardly been pushed into the ground. I reckon someone's hit them on the top with a hammer. So I am going to use a proper star picket driver. So I'm going to go along and I'm going to plonk all of these back in the right direction. I'm using a driver that is at the correct height for a stock fence. So if I hammer this in until the driver hits the ground, I know all the star pickets are at the right level and I don't have a fence that's going like that. So as you can see, this post has only just been loosely knocked into the ground, probably only that far, with a hammer, so it's burred the top of the stake. And the holes, instead of pointing outwards so I can tie the fence to them, are pointing inwards, so I've got to do all sorts of crazy things with the wire. So I'm just going to pull that out. And it's been bent, so we can use the star picket driver to fix that. Close enough. Now I'll put that back in line, the rest of our fence. And when I hit the top of the post, I want to throw the driver onto the post so I'm not touching it when it stops and I don't get blisters. Done. another huge advantage to using a post driver this long. Apart from the weight, yes, you do have to pick it up and throw it down. It will drive the post in faster, but more importantly, this is a lot safer than those little short ones you can buy. For my 2 cents worth, don't ever buy a short post driver. The problem is, if you buy a post driver that's only that long, you can very easily bring it up over the top of the post with your pull-up, and then when you throw it down, the post can actually hit your hand. And there was a young fellow on a farm I worked at who had to have microsurgery to reattach 2 fingers because he'd been using a short post driver, not a long one like this. He'd overextended it above the top of the post, brought it down, the post had severed a couple of fingers. Now the next bit's a bit of fun. We're going to run out our 2.5mm wire, bottom and top, tie it off both ends, then strain it up. Always strain the bottom wire first, that way when you're straining the top wire and the post moves a little bit, because you've already done the one at the bottom, it's not going to lose much tension at all. One more little thing while I'm running this wire out, I want to take a break. When you're starting a new reel, the reel's always done up with bands of wire. They have knots on one side. Always put the knots on the bands to the top of your reel when you put it on your Jenny and cut it off that way. That way you know the reel's up the right way and it won't jam on you. The next thing is there's always a tag on the leading end of wire. Make sure you start running out the tag end. Don't run out the other end because it's underneath and it will spin round and snag. If you're running out multiple runs like I am, always bend the end before you stop so that you always find the correct end. Now this is the next bit. It's one of my regular viewers, Alice, who sent me a comment the other day. She wanted to know a little bit more detail about what routine I use to put strainers on the wire. I always start with the lever end. I squeeze the cams onto the wire as tight as I can and I give it a good pull. That makes it dig in nicely. This is really slippery wire, so you want to make sure that it can hold your body weight. The next thing I do is I put the end of the chain into the strainers and I walk this out. Open up the end, on the wire as tight as I can, bend that in, once again, give it a really good pull on the cam, make a bit of a bend in the Now my strainers are attached to the wire. Notice I always take the spring out, I reckon it's quicker, and I simply just walk the claws up the chain. So this is the toughest part of the whole lot, I reckon, is connecting onto the old dodgy fence over in the back corner, and I'm having to struggle away to get my new nicely formed fence up against this disgrace of a fence that goes further up the hill. That paddock will be next, but in the meantime I can't take the fence down and it's around this end post, so it's going to take a few minutes, but we're not going to cheat. We're going to do proper knots all the way down. Don't ever feel that you can get away with just stapling your mesh onto your end post. If you're going to run out sheet mesh, not all the ends, it's a lot stronger and you'll be happier with the result for many years to come. Okay, so we've come to the fun bit now, which is straining the mesh back up and getting the fence standing back up again. And you can see I've tied it off using end knots all the way down the post. I like to tie it off on posts. I don't like to ever staple it or tuck it in or anything dodgy like that because it can come loose. They're tied off properly. If you need to know how to do that knot, there's a link at the end of this video and also in the description for the end knot. If we have a look up the fence line here, you'll see that it's reasonably tight. How tight do we make the mesh? Good question. You can see that there's still a little bit of a kink from the manufacturer in that fence. You want to take about 3/4 of the kink out of it. Some people say half. I like to take 3/4 out because when you take the strainers off and stuff, there's always a little bit of slack there. Now what I am going to do, I'm going to break the mould for me. I've got my strainers, 2 sets of strainers, top and bottom, attached to my straining plate. What I am going to do is I'm going to join this now with gripples, because that allows me to put individual strain on individual strands and adjust them up later on. I don't normally use gripples, I like to use knots most of the time, but this is fiddly stuff with knots, and gripples just make the job so much easier and quicker. And because mesh is not under a lot of strain, they're perfect for the job. I couldn't recommend a better joiner for this sort of work. So now we're at the last 3 finishing touches. The first is clipping the wires together. So for that job I'm putting in 6 of these clips per panel, 3 top, 3 bottom. So because I use the long star picket driver and it's all the posts are now to a set height, that makes this job really easy. I just need a small bit of tie wire, put that through the post, wrap that wire around like that, come over to the other side of the post and do the same thing on this side. There is our post tied off. I just do that at the top, middle and bottom of each post. So now the last thing to do is to run out a top wire about that high above the netting. Here we go at the last step, attaching the top wire to the star pickets. So thanks for getting to the end. Don't forget, if you like what you've seen on this video and you'd like to support the channel, please do click the little red button down there, like and subscribe. It really helps it out. Thanks guys, and we'll see you next week. Everyone's a critic.